All right, so we're joined all the way from the shores of Lake Michigan in the beautiful city of Chicago, Illinois, by Vera Dureke. We thank you so much for joining us. You're a data science expert, the technology diva of the Windy City, president of the Chicago chapter of BIT, along with so many other great organizations in tech up there in Chicago. We thank you so much for taking time for us today. This is our computer science engineering class. I got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson High School. We're recording this for all of our friends in Madison County schools. My friend Angela Jordan over there at Shirley Simmons, my friends Jatoria Kirksey and Angela Reed at Old Town Middle School, all of our other schools, and our YouTube channel. So thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule for us today.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, obviously, we want to talk about all the trends you're seeing and all the great things you've done recently and what you have on the horizon. Because I was listening to one of your interviews and it was very interesting. A lot of the trends that you were talking about. But just give us a little background. You are originally from Illinois, but you're a first generation American, daughter of Nigerian immigrants, and you went to community college, which a lot of our kids are considering. And we have a great community college system here in Mississippi. So we'd like to hear a little bit about your educational background and your path because it was a winding one to get into tech.
Yeah, so again, I started in community college. I went to Eastern Gateway Community College in Ohio. Originally, I was wanting to do computer hardware engineering, but as times have changed in regards of what hardware exists and kind of is nowadays, it's more leaned towards software engineering than the actual tangible hardware. So I had to kind of reevaluate myself to look to do a pivot. Upon like talking with friends and kind of like reevaluating like things that I really like doing in regards to tech, I knew it was going to be tech, but didn't know particularly what. Stumbled into data science, started doing like light certificate work and just kind of practicing in regards to it. And it's something I absolutely fell in love with. By the time I finished my associates, what was it, December 2023, I just immediately knew I needed to look for a school for data science. So I'm currently finishing my degree. I'm a data science and math double major at Indiana University East. I
Wow.
graduate next May. Well, May 2026. Thank God. But it has been an amazing ride just to like understand like the full insights of what like data entails in the world and society. And especially as we're looking at like machine learning and AI, especially generative AI and how everything kind of evolves around it, it has been fantastic to kind of go into. Beyond this, I'm looking to pursue my PhD in data ethics because again, as much as implementation of AI and data science is very important, we need to look at like strong frameworks to understand how is this AI or like model going to be impacting not even just like ourselves as tech practitioners, but even to students, even to individual people, like your information, your data that is comprised in a lot of the products we're using, Zoom, for example. Um, can be mishandled and misused depending on how a company views it. And so someone needs to be there to kind of again implement those ethical frameworks. So that is the goal and the plan. But yeah.
Yeah, and you've mentioned a lot of racial disparities in data science, and we'll definitely get to that. But one thing I want to talk about, I think it's very interesting. It's kind of linked to tech, but it kind of isn't. But when it comes to professional development of any sort, whether kids want to get into tech or not, I think, and I don't want to tell the story for you, but you've got a really cool story of the way you became president of the chapter of Black in Tech in Chicago because it was all about networking. Because look, you can go get a fancy degree, you can have a 4.0, but if nobody knows who you are and you haven't made that effort to put yourself out there, it's really going to be hard to break into any field. And you have a really funny story of when you were in Disney World and you got to meet somebody and they just made you the president because you put yourself out there. And it's amazing what doors can open for you just by networking. So just talk about some of the things you've been involved in because that's just off. You've been involved in out in tech, all so many things there in Chicago. So just talk about all the different things that you've gotten involved in. And it was all because of your networking and putting yourself out there. Say, hey, I'm here, I'm willing to learn, and I want to make a difference.
Yeah, so when I originally started my degree, I'm a little bit of finishing by the time I turned 30. By the time I looked in regards of my degree, I was also looking to find ways to engage because just working and just being in a job and just like having a degree is not necessarily enough sometimes to be able to traverse in industries or for people to know you inadvertently, as you said. And personally, I just love volunteering and giving back. I think a lot of times, especially for Black people, like we're so used to just the grit and the grind of kind of trudging through, figuring our success, getting there, and then kind of like moving on with ourselves that we don't necessarily look back, and it kind of causes like systematic issues where people feel left behind or they're unsupported. So as you said, yes, I ended up becoming the chapter president, honestly, on a very funny whim. I can't say the full story because this is for kids, but and I wouldn't encourage in regards to what I did. But inadvertently, where it started was a conversation where I just introduced
Yeah,
myself and said, "Hi, I'm Vera. Like, I really want to volunteer and be engaged. Like, what does that look like, and how does that go?" And
absolutely.
though it didn't immediately start that conversation, remembered afterwards. And honestly and truly, that is such a sentimental thing nowadays of where I've been going around, whether it's conferences, whether it's events and everything. It's often the conversations that I have to where people are often memorable to me or I'm memorable and impactful to them. And then opportunities kind of go from there. But yes, so I've done Flax and Technology. I've also am the marketing lead for Out in Tech Chicago and help support them. I've just been very active in the Chicago community at large. I do support and also do work outside of that with just like there's an organization called Baddies in Tech where it's more focused towards women again in all facets of tech, trying to help out. So I do Discord moderation for them as well. But again, it's always a conversation of where you want to take your intentions and how it goes. And I feel sometimes too, a lot of people feel that it could be transactional and you're supposed to like get something out of it immediately in that conversation. That's not often how it works. It can be a slow burn. But so long as you are being very intentional with those dynamics could be the world's your oyster, honestly and truly. Like because of networking, I've traveled a lot last year. Even to a lot of
Yeah.
the work that I've done, it's connected me to people in other places that I wouldn't even expected and believed if I just decided to again just work and be to myself. And even to friends who are just like in the workforce, they're seeing what I'm doing. They're like, "Oh, you're a celebrity. Like people know you." And I'm like, "Not necessarily. I just again start with a conversation and go from there."
Absolutely, but it's amazing where a conversation can take you. You never know who you're going to run into. You can't be scared to put yourself out there. Simple things like walking in a room and introducing yourself. You never know who you're going to meet. You had that great meeting in Orlando, and that has led to so many open doors for you. So, as our young people are seeing this, even if they have no interest in ever being in the tech field, just always be aware of how to network and market yourself, sell a product. It is amazing where that can take you. Now, we talked about data science a little bit, and we've had a few data scientists in this class. We hadn't talked about it in a while, but it is amazing how data science literally touches every single field. Every company is dealing with a data scientist of some sort at some point. I know you've done some work in the financial realm. You've done some work in manufacturing. You've done some work in engineering. In just your short time, you've touched a lot of areas of data science. So for people that may be kind of curious about what it is, why it's needed, just talk about some of the areas that data science touches that we maybe don't realize.
So again, I think it often starts with the conversation of what is data. And if we even look at like the number of people in a classroom, like demographics and like what those needs are, that inadvertently can make a decision and impact no matter what industry it goes. So like case an example for schools, the number of students that they are and maybe depending upon the educational needs of those different types of students shift in regards of maybe what a school administration would look like for funding and everything. If they feel like they're not getting enough funding for testing needs, they have low test scores and everything. Those demographics and again, that data does change. I've done a lot of work in just a variety of aspects, whether it's been in the healthcare industry. I did a dermatology project in that regard. I've done stuff
Oh,
in
cool.
regards of is it aeronautical NASA. There we go. I always try to see if I can find the adjective for it, but I've done work in regards of NASA. I've done work in actual tech with a categorization project with Verizon where you can think and believe like data is applicable, it legit stretches no matter what, from the littlest things, like if even just in regards of like land and surveying to where I've even met people in regards of like beauty industry and how they're looking at data. It is such an expansive industry and especially now with how technology or like how again even businesses are moving themselves forward to see what their customers are, what their users are, data will always be behind it. So there will either not only be the data scientist, it may be a data engineer, it may be an analyst, it may be a machine learning engineer, it may be an AI engineer. Like there's so many roles that encompass in regards of handling data that it's always going to be open and available for somebody to be involved with.
Yeah, and and I know you're finishing your degree, which is awesome, and congratulations on that, and you want to continue that. But we have some kids that maybe say, "Look, I want to get into tech, I want to get into the into this data. I'm a big coder, but I'm not really a college person." And I know you have a length of certifications that's just too long to name. So if we have kids that maybe aren't, they don't want to put the financial burden, they don't want to go to all those other classes, but they want to get into this field. This is an area where you don't necessarily need a traditional 4 year degree to get into. And I know you've worked with a variety of people with different backgrounds. So if a kid isn't a college person, is this still an area that they could fit into?
Absolutely. Still at the base fundamentals, though, you would need to understand math. And I know for some people that can be very daunting. Even being a math double major, a lot of times I've come to understand that it's not necessarily like the math topics. It could be the way that it's taught to a person and how they understand it, where it could be a little bit of a difference. But you'll need to at least know like base statistics and kind of evolve from there. If you're going into data science, like higher calculus and everything like that. I kind of dabble in regards of like depending on what scale and area that people are wanting to do, if it's a matter that they should pursue their degree or not. I know if you're looking at more analytical work, which again is base statistics, I would definitely say you can do a certification, you can do a boot camp and kind of go through that way. But if you're looking to get a little bit more sophisticated in regards of it, especially with how rapidly AI education and all literacy is going at large, I would kind of recommend more to get into the forefront of education and get a degree. But even still, there's so much education out and about. I know it is called, I think Data Camp. Data Camp is a good certification that has stuff, again, ranging in all varying roles of data where you can sit here and start to learn at least on the side and brush up in regards of projects. There is also some online boot camps that will also help facilitate and help you with like building a portfolio and getting comfortable in regards of those concepts and then going forward to help support you afterwards for job placement and everything else in between. It really just depends on like what resources you're looking at and how to go about it. But again, it varies fundamentally based upon how well you are with math. If you're like, I don't like math, then maybe like brush up and talk with the teacher a little bit and then you work your way up. But if you're really good and you know you can code and program, you can kind of go from there.
Yeah, and our middle schoolers that'll see this, they've started getting into coding. They're learning, the few basic languages. And if they get into high school, they go through our IT program. They can get even more sophisticated and walk out of high school with IT certifications. So learning these new, and again, data science is on the cutting edge. It's changing weekly. I'm sure just in your short time, you've seen all types of changes. So if kids are learning to code now and they're learning to code in high school, will that give them a kind of a leg up to get into this area?
Absolutely. Even just learning fundamental Python, that is key and essential for a lot of data roles in and of itself. There may be SQL and other languages that you'll have to learn. And again, it varies based upon the industry and honestly company specific. But learning fundamental coding honestly helps a lot for you to break down what like a model could mean or like what these particular like if you're looking even in regards of like a particular program, like I treat it as a sentence. Once you kind of understand what the sentence is and what it's how it's executing itself, you can go honestly miles above and beyond. So them learning this now honestly is fantastic because especially as things are changing, that fundamental basis will at least help moving forward in regards of how they'll look at models or how they'll look at data and everything in general, because it most of the times it is based in Python that you're looking in regards to for anything in a data role. Again, varies depending on company and everything. Roles can sometimes adjust from there, but at that fundamental basis will do you wonders.
Yeah. Now, and something we kind of alluded to this is the racial disparities in data science and in some of these AI programs. And this has been a topic for us all year. And I got to connect you with a few people that have done some research in this. And it's something that you mentioned, and we've had previous guests mention about when some of this stuff is programmed, when they're using data and they're using programmers and codes from all white men. Now, that doesn't mean these guys are racist. It doesn't mean that they're evil, but they're not going to have the same type of background and experience that a female would have, that a black woman would have, that a anybody that's not a white male would have. And it is in the healthcare industry, it is misdiagnosed diseases. In dermatology, it is misdiagnosed skin conditions. And we're even seeing things like seeing people crossing the street on these Teslas where it's supposed to see everybody. It has led to some holes that we would not have thought of have it not been for data science. So just talk about some of those other disparities, because look, and look, I'm just as guilty. I wasn't aware of these things, and it wasn't that I didn't care. It's just because I didn't have that background. So just talk about some of these disparities that these kids need to think about and can really convince them to get into this area.
So tech at large, and I feel like we need to start like not only just in data, but in tech at large, that there's a lot of times that product implementation is not necessarily looking forward to like what a how a individual person like me as a black person would like use or interact with something in comparison to again a standard user would just be the main functionality of it. When we're looking in regards to data, and especially just to how again it's solving problems, um, a lot of the implicit biases or thought processes to how models can be developed again starts from concept and production. We need to be honestly evaluating like how are we accommodating to what the problem is everyone being reached to and like being evaluated in regards of it. You meant hit some really great points in regards of like healthcare surveillance and everything else like that. Another one back in the and it's more tech related, but in the medical industry, there is a I can't remember the name of it. I'm not that this savvy about it. When reading oxygen levels, there is a meter that sometimes practitioners will put onto your finger. It will not properly read at times melanin
Yeah.
levels to be able to read the exact oxygen levels in comparison to someone who may have less melanin in comparison. So even just in those evaluations and how that can change in regards of diagnosis, and again even conditions shift what like data and how again those business decisions are looked at. So having someone of myself to be in the room to be like, hey, were these models evaluated for these type of people, yes or no, even from the information that's being loaded into these models, which again sometimes may have biases, even pulling to Google, which they're a really huge company, well known and everything. They've even done classification issues where they've misrepresented Black people to be called gorillas. I can't remember the full time period of when that happened, but they had their own identification to where they had that ended up being a huge case on Twitter. They didn't necessarily fix or resolve it, kind of like hushed it on the side. But those are just aspects to where, again, racial biases exist and to where, again, the representation is definitely needed to be in the industry. Even if you feel that like it's an emerging industry, you don't have to be there, like someone solving for you. I promise you, they're not often doing so. And there's definite need for more Black people to be involved in these areas so that they're considering things more. Another example that I have is I went to the University of Michigan for a data science symposium. And there was somebody who was talking in regards of a model that they did with Amazon to implement and fix hiring practices so that more women or just more marginalized people are accepted in regards to like interviews and again for better hiring practices for Amazon. But with how the model went about it, and not to be super complicated, there's in words or like in English, there's like denotation and connotation. In data, there's a thing called a sentiment score. So depending on how a word is classified per se, will give either a higher score or a lower score. Well, we're looking at again hiring practices for a standard man who may be accepted again in a lot of tech interviews. They're often using action verbs, like very tangible metrics. They don't have to sit here and kind of like separate themselves in a different aspect that a woman may have to, or some other marginalized identity. So when adding like female or anything else, those can sometimes change that sentient score or sentiment score, excuse me, and lower it to where someone may not be able to be picked in that model. And especially with how society is changing for DEI practices and everything, that model was ultimately unsuccessful and was put to failure. But those are things where it's like these are these biases that we need to again be evaluating, not only just again at the end as we're finishing up and like, okay, hey, the model runs. Let's just see what happens. Like this should be thought of in process from the start, from the concept of what the problem is and how to kind of go about evaluating that in data. But yeah.
Absolutely. Now, I want to get to their questions, but one thing I think is important, and I ask everybody the same question, and I know that other teachers can appreciate this because what we deal with in our classes is we have these projects. The first time it gets hard, oh, this is too hard, I quit. Uh, how often in tech does a tech person get it right the first time?
Not at all. Like maybe if you're doing like simple support and you know what the issue is to fix it, a lot of times, especially even in data, you'll run into an issue where there could be a hiccup in the process to understanding what the data is, and that can cause delays and everything in the model development. It is never going to be something super easy. Again, unless it is a very simple fix, like you know something's broken, here's how I know how to fix it, sometimes something like that. But if you're looking at software, anything more a little bit more dynamic, it's never going to be easy. And I think also too, I often like to challenge when people feel easily defeated in regards to things because it's not necessarily that they're unwilling to learn, they're just having a hard time to understand what the problem is and how to do it. I love being in those environments. I like being in the point where I'm not understanding things and I get frustrated because it makes me more motivated to figure out how to approach this and how to go about this. I may not be able to understand it right now, but when I do get to finishing that problem and seeing what that looks like afterwards, I'm honestly so much more better of a person in regards of doing it. And then it makes it easier for me to also talk to other people who may have similar issues like that. So always be persistent and be willing to learn, honestly and truly. It may be hard sometimes. It may be that you need to step away and it's frustrating to you, but always engage in regards to something very difficult because you don't know where that could take you in regards to knowledge.
Oh, tell me about it. Well, I do have a couple of questions from the students, and I like these. This is
Okay.
Bryson Stevens. He's in ninth grade, and he asked, "What is the most difficult
Okay.
thing you've had to learn getting into data science?"
Uh, Outside of more math. I think right now my biggest hang up is there is this programming language called R. It's a more statistical based programming language in comparison to Python. And for me, I'm not really as how do I word this in the best way? As much as I do programming and everything. I don't want to sit here and dissuade the kids. I know myself, I a lot of times for different programming languages, if I have a hard time with syntax and everything else, I stumble a lot. So the statistics classes I've taken have been based in R, or I'll have to do right now biostatistics, which is based in R. So I'm ready to already give up if we're going back to being persistent and I'm jokingly shooting myself in the foot about this. Sometimes I just want to give up and just do a program in Python and just call it a day. But again, I have to persevere and also because I have to sit
Yeah.
the assignment in R. Go through in regards of just learning something brand new and seeing how that goes. I think one of the outside of one of the bigger things that has been really interesting to understand is in like machine learning or in AI, again, you're looking at higher math concepts, whether it is like tuning in regards to particular features to make a model move faster or gain more information or learn at a different rate. Kind of seeing what those processes are and how that works is honestly such a nerve-wracking experience because you don't know what you're going to get. And depending on what environment that you have or like your computer and everything else in between, it could be something of a quick process that you can do, or it could sometimes take 4.5 hours. It really kind of varies in between. So I've definitely grown to have patience to just understand like what my projects can entail and be a little bit open-minded. If it's something where it's like, again, it's going to be a 4 hour process and I got to figure out and do something else. That's been a learning adjustment. But outside of that, R has been my most difficult thing. If someone can learn R at their ages, honestly and truly, go all in for data. I wish you the absolute best. But for me, it was like, again, even in math, even as I have to do it with my math major, it is something that I've had such a difficulty with just coming to understand and coming to terms with. I enjoy it. I understand why R has its purposes in statistical based understandings. Just I don't want to use it.
Well, we have several middle schoolers that have done very well in our coding competitions in Mississippi, so that could be something that they can learn as they go through high school, and like you said, could be very successful. I just got time for one more. This is Rashawn Smith. He's a senior, and he asked, "What words of encouragement would you give someone that wanted to get into data science?"
Ooh, that is a good question. Um, Again, be comfortable with math. Be very comfortable with math. But also be flexible to what data can go into. I feel a lot of times that in my experience of interacting with other people in data science, it's very similar to software engineering. Like you kind of can get into your niches of like what you're comfortable with and what you like and what you don't like, but be flexible to understand like from just even the soft skills and talking in regards of like other people who may not be as technical to understand what data science is, what you're doing in particular is applicable to them, which is often the biggest issue sometimes when dealing with data. It's not necessarily the coding, it's how to bring this to people to tell them, like, hey, here's what the data is, here's what we're doing, like how we're going about this, here are the results. This is kind of why you need to care about these things. That is absolutely super crucial to understand just as heavily in regards to like the technical work. You can code and program honestly to all you can. But if you can't sit here and have those skills, that makes it a little bit harder to, again, understand what these numbers look like. Numbers at large, if you can see a large number and be like, is this a bad thing? Is this a good thing? Until you have someone to be able to take that information and kind of help you through it is one thing as well. Another thing I also do say is not necessarily, again, back to the just the flexibility and dynamic aspect of data, is not looking at just and programming itself, is looking at other areas of how data applies. Data, again, is very flexible. I've seen stuff in regards to data journalism. I've seen data science and data in regards of like the video game industry. So if you're thinking like, oh, you have to go into big tech and make it big, you can honestly combine your interests and see where it goes in industry and kind of apply it to where your projects can go from there. It also makes the passion, the journey more interesting and more riveting to tell people. Case in example, I'm actually going to be taking upon a new role at AAA because I want to do ethics, and I ended up starting to talk about my journey and all of the projects I've done, and especially to my classes of why I like data ethics and why it's important to me, why I wanted to take it for this role. And they were completely enthusiastic about it and loved my journey in regards of it. Even when talking to other people, just in regards of how data goes, like it's such a fantastic thing to go to be. So definitely look and be again very open-minded to what data can encompass. You could be somewhere in finance where you could be doing like actually where data can take you in the world of. So don't necessarily hyperfix on like your Microsoft, your Google, and everything like that. They'll be there if you're also doing work in the industries that you're interested in doing. That's fine, but also figure out again what things perhaps like push you to drive to do ethics. If it's a matter of like you want to see change in particular industries, if you want to do video games and be like close to the video game industry. I know there's people that was their reasoning to why they ended up in data. The world is your oyster, and really just see like what all encompasses and entails upon it. And again, from just even like soft skills, like again, even like philosophy and other ideologies in data and what that looks like as well. That is also again equally as important as just being as technical to be able to program, to do a model, to be able to then showcase your skills. So those would be kind of like the big things. But nevertheless, like if it feels daunting, it looks like it's a lot of text and it is daunting sometimes, even for me as I'm going through my classes, you can absolutely do it.
Yeah, and AAA is not a tech company, but they're obviously in need of tech people. We had another guest of this class last year who was the data scientist for the city of Dallas. So they are even having data scientists in city government. So it really is touching everything. Now, we're almost out of time, and we thank you so much for taking some time for us. But a couple things before we go. Um, First of all, obviously me and you have never met in person, but just from what I've read about you and seen about you, just in the last couple of days and weeks as I was prepping for this, one thing about you that I admire so much is you are unapologetically yourself, and you are not ashamed of how you live your life, of what people think about you, and you have found your place no matter what any type of outside influences may tell you. Because in interview you talked about you got out of tech for a short time, but came back when you saw that that was your real path. So we have kids that may be worried about what their family thinks, worried about my family wants me to do this, my friends want me to do this. I still want to be cool, so I don't think this would be fun. But they may be driven in a certain area, and you're such a great example of that. So as we close up, as these kids start to transition through high school, middle school, make decisions for their life, make decisions for their career. Why is it so important to stay true to themselves and true to their passion and true to their talents?
Honestly, it just makes sense. So thank you so much in regards of all that. Again, my parents are immigrants. A lot of the times when it comes to even talking with immigrants who may not be like understanding or versed in the industries that you're wanting to pursue, it can be very daunting. It can be filled with obstacles because just because you want to pursue a goal, you may not have the support that you need in regards to doing it. My mom again is a nurse. She's been a nurse all my life. I even talk with her in regards to tech, and she doesn't necessarily understand it until she kind of saw the ways that I was able to showcase to her my skills. Does she understand data science? No. Can we find like interacting ways, like talking about bioinformatics or talking about intersections in the medical industry and where I can kind of interact with? Yes. So for kids, especially nowadays, I feel like tech is like more acceptable than what it was. I feel like a lot of times like people talk about being in tech and they're like, oh, you're gonna be like this really like weird nerd. You're gonna be like antisocial, like not talking behind a computer. Tech is such a dynamic industry to where you can be yourself. You can find yourself in any facet. Just because you can code, that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a software engineer, which I think is also a huge misnomer. Where you have to also like be heavily like into coding to be able to be in tech. You have people who do design work in tech. You have people who do program management or project management who lead the project themselves. So if you like talking a lot, don't do much in classes like that. But if you are great in regards to presentation or skills or being able to lead, that can lead into a technical aspect. But just at the core and at the forefront, being yourself and just being where you want to go to, honestly, just it makes yourself feel better. You will try to follow trends and everything else, and it just doesn't feel right. It won't feel organic to you. It'll be very stressed and very like upset with yourself, especially like looking in regards of other people who maybe again seeing themselves to be successful. That's not your journey. Life is a sprint. Sorry, life is not a sprint. It's a marathon, not a sprint. So take your time. There's again, even for me, I've been through customer support. I've done IT support. I've done operations, light finance, industry work, just all across the board. And the one thing for me that always just a very small light in my life was always tech. It was always I was helping somebody in a technical aspect, being able to help somebody and I thought it was going to be IT support. I thought it was going to be hardware engineering. And it all just stumbled to where I'm at now. And I'm super grateful to be able to say this now, especially like I talk to my sisters and say the same thing as they're kind of growing up and going through life themselves. But live your life. It's okay to sit here and kind of also like take those obstacles and be in low moments too, but you'll understand and come to see like what works for you and not necessarily use what other people are doing as a means to kind of cookie cut into yourself because that's not what's going to work. So yeah, definitely being yourself, definitely following what those dreams are and seeing what that looks like is often again the most successful thing I can sit here and say, and it makes you just so happy. I, again, could not sit here and say all the accolades and all the things that I've done that have just brought me
Yeah.
so much joy in my life and in my time, just because I wanted to sit here and do data science. So that's all. I could sit here and ramble all day. We'll be stuck all day, but that would be the short end of it.
That's incredible. Well, again, I appreciate you so much taking some time out of your schedule for us. Really impressive all the great things you're doing, and congratulations on your soon to be graduation. We look forward to having you again to hear about your next step. So, Vera Dureke, all the way from Chicago, Illinois. We thank you so much for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
I talk to you soon, buddy.